At this time, I'd like to call the Plaquemines Parish Council Audit Committee meeting for January the 13th to order at 1:03. Machine is open for roll call. Let the record reflect that Ms. Newberry and I are here, and Mr. Konovich is out at work, and Mr. Duke is here representing the Audit Department. At this time, we'll ask Mr. Duke to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible,
Liberty and justice for all.
We're moving out of sync. Okay, we'll move to the first item, new business.
Agenda item 2, new business. A, review of surplus property audit.
Okay.
Duke, and make sure you're speaking to the mic, Mr. Duke.
Yes, sir. On January 10th, 2022, I finalized the Plaquemines Parish Government's Surplus Property Internal Audit, project number 2021-1313. Let's scroll to page 6, and we'll go over my conclusions and the observations. Page 6, the internal audit conclusions. Conclusions. The internal auditor arrived at the following conclusions during this audit. In my opinion, there is a risk that surplus property could be sold below fair market value in violation of the Louisiana Constitution, Article 7, Section 14. The Louisiana Legislative Auditor states below, note that it is mandatory to establish the value of the thing belonging to the state that a public entity wishes to declare to be surplus, as any disposition below fair market value would be an unlawful donation. Internal audit observations. Observation number 1, surplus property policies and procedures. The auditor's recommendation. In my opinion, immovable and movable surplus property policies and procedures as a general guide for employees could be included in the legal and purchasing department's policy and procedures manuals. Management response. We are working on including the auction guidelines in the purchasing manual. State guidelines are being followed at this time. It is handled like a bid. Auction is advertised for 15 days, and equipment is sold to the highest bidder at an open auction. Observation number 2, Louisiana Legislative Auditor and the Louisiana Constitution. The background on this, movable property and real property. Disposition under RS Revised Statute 49-125 authorizes a public entity to employ a qualified licensed auctioneer to handle the sale. AG Opinion number 070096 states that Louisiana Revised Statute 49-125 fails to reveal a mandate that only a licensed auctioneer can conduct the sale by public auction. Thus, the AG opines that the surplus movable property may be advertised and sold by the entity at the regular auction sale, provided the requirements of Louisiana Revised Statute 49-125 are met. These requirements are: sale must be advertised, no sale shall be processed less than the required law, with the public entity reserving the right to reject any and all bids and remove the item from sale. Notice of the sale should be published at least once, at least 15 days prior to the sale, indicating the minimum bid of the appraised value of the item and the entity's right to reject any and all bids. Further, the sale may be advertised and sealed bids submitted to the entity, with the property awarded to the highest bidder, provided the entity receives the fair market value. Regarding the sale of land, which we'll discuss down in another observation, we can skip that for now. And if we take a look at my recommendation, the auditor is researching AG opinion number 0096 to see if it applies to Henderson Auctions. Henderson Auctions has stated to me they don't believe that this AG opinion applies to them. I disagree. The Louisiana Legislative Auditor states in their definition of surplus property, note that it is mandatory to establish the value before it is put up for auction. In addition, if the benefits outweigh the cost to the parish, PPG could hold their own surplus property auctions. Management's opinion, they feel like they're following the guidelines and working with Henderson Auctions, and that they are in compliance with the Constitution and selling equipment fair market value. By the time they send the equipment to auction, it needs to be pulled and drugged or pushed on trucks. Its value is bare minimum and almost considered scrap. Observation number 3, Henderson Auction Agreement with PPG. The recommendations: a right to audit clause should be incorporated into the Henderson auction agreements in compliance with Parish Ordinance number 2110, adopted on November 12, 2020. See attachment 10. Should be noted that an email was sent to Henderson Auctions dated October 27, 21. The auditor requested the buyer's names of the June 2021 PPG surplus property audited. This information has not been submitted by Henderson Auctions. See attachments 9 and 7. In the Henderson Auction Agreement or by ordinance, PPG could require that the appraised value or another established value could be the starting point for the surplus property being auctioned. Attachment number 3. Management response. After speaking with Henderson Auctions, they would agree to giving the audit committee the sale information on a confidential basis and not for public record. They will also include a right to audit clause in the upcoming contract. June 2021 auction of PPG surplus property, observation number 4. Recommendation, in my opinion, to help ensure that the item auctioned is not sold below fair market value and that the parish is receiving at least fair market value property auction. The appraised value or another established value should be the starting point for property being auctioned. Their management response in regards to the fire trucks with low mileage: the truck may have low miles on the wheels, but the equipment on the vehicle has high usage at fire and events. The trucks are stripped to the bone and are only of use to someone with specialized interest. Observation number 5, PPG Track E1 surplus land. Recommendation, in my opinion, the sale of public land should be advertised to the public in accordance with AG opinion below. The Louisiana Legislative Auditor states the following: regarding the notice provision, AG opinion number 920606, discussing the sale of land, states that the publication and notice allow opportunity for the opposition to be proposed auction to be made known, and in our estimate generates the most interest to get the best price for the property sought to be sold. Thus, the critical inquiry here is not what method is used to sell the surplus property, but whether the proposed sale is advertised in such a manner as to adequately give the public notice of the proposed sale, as well as create sufficient interest in the sale so that the best price is obtained. This piece of land, apparently, according to the parish attorney, was a private sale. There's no bid documents. And further, the sale never took place because the purchaser said it wasn't zoned correctly. Mr. Burris told Mr. Konovich that they needed to work on a new system so that this doesn't happen again. Okay, so that's what I've got on surplus property. The main gist here for me is just to ensure that what is being auctioned is that we're auctioning it for at least fair market value and not in violation of the Constitution and, just giving this as a donation. In addition, the auctioneer is under the impression, and I've talked to a couple of attorneys, and it's very vague. This I'd probably have to write a letter to the AG to get this really clarified. When they sell the property at auction, and they're selling it to a group of people, and whoever has the highest bid, in their opinion, that is fair market value at that point. Whether that's really fair market value at that point is up for debate, I think.
Moving along, Ms. Newberry, you have any comments or questions yet?
You made a statement, Mr. Duke, about something that we can do in-house. Have you had a conversation with anyone about that?
Yeah, Mr. Konovich had mentioned that he stated previously, I believe, I don't want to speak out of turn, but it was in council meetings that he thought that we could hold the auction ourselves and do a better job with that. If the cost is
Yeah, it's definitely something we could look into. I mean, we got all this property here. We have places to put equipment. I mean, when you said that, it definitely makes sense. It's something to look into.
yes, ma'am.
And if we're gonna, and maybe just get an auctioneer over here. I mean, why not pay our own guys that always could use a little extra overtime versus someone else? So that's definitely something that we could definitely look into, and if we can just get administration to even listen to something like that, that would be great.
That's I agree totally with that.
Thank you.
Ms. Newberry, it's a very good point. Historically, what has happened prior to going to Henderson, we used to have public auctions for public equipment and so forth that were surplus, and the local people from the parish would come in and wind up benefiting from that auction. Other people now, I don't know how many of them go to the Henderson auction in Baton Rouge or wherever this has held, but my important point to me is that when we did it that way, we knew who bought the equipment.
Yes, sir.
Now, in this Henderson auction, they are refusing to tell us who purchases the equipment. So my concern is that we don't know if the third party may be someone here who is authorizing the equipment to go to sale.
A related party transaction.
A related party transaction, as you state, or, and I'm not saying that's happening, but it clears up the fact that when we did it here on site, people would see who bought it. And they'd say, oh, he got this, and he got this, and he got this. And it was all local people mainly that usually bought the stuff. But in this case, by the auctioneer refusing to give us that information, it raises my antennas to say, why is it such a secret? If this is a public auction for a fair public price, why are you refusing to give us this information? And I know, Mr. Duke, you've tried to receive that information several times and been refused.
Yes.
So I believe that when the next opportunity arises for us, if we're going to continue to use Henderson, we have to change the language in the contract.
Okay.
And we need to add some language in there that allows it or makes it mandatory that they provide us a listing of the equipment that is sold. They do that, at least they tell us how much it's sold for, but to include also the purchaser.
Okay.
And I think that would go a long way to clearing up any speculation about anything that may be going on with third-party transactions.
Absolutely. Okay, yes, sir.
I have another question. What is the after effect when something's not sold? Does that need to be hauled back here? Or is it something they keep for next auction? Do you know of any?
I think it needs to be given back to
I guess I'm
Parish has
just
to-
wanting if that's an extra fee. We're having to haul equipment and
Probably,
haul it back,
yes.
or is it something they hold on to?
that would be
till
an
next?
extra fee.
So we don't have an answer to that.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think Mr. Konovich makes a good point. He's not here to speak for himself today, but in a couple of occasions, he said that, what we should be doing is before we send this stuff or before we decide to auction this off, we ought to strip it down and take the valuable parts off of it,
Right.
because we're in a crunch economically, and use those parts until they're useless.
Absolutely.
And that way we can sell scrap and probably get as much money as we're getting now at the auction.
Right.
So, I mean, those were points he was making to me, and he's, like I said, he's not here to speak for himself, but they made sense to me.
Yeah.
So,
So we can't just simply send scrap to the scrapyard, it still has to go out?
well, we bid, usually what we did, we had a bid. We would advertise once a year, and we would receive a bid, and those successful bidders would bid, say, we're going to give you X amount of dollars for scrap. You know, whether it's steel or tin or whatever. And then, you know, we could do that on an annual basis and sell it for scrap. As far as some of these pieces of equipment, maybe we could sell them as equipment, you know, but that's just some of the comments that I have heard since this audit was in place. As far as the property goes, I think that we have to clear this up. And, you know, we've been trying to sell surplus property here now for a couple of years. And this was the first effort, and it wasn't successful because of a couple of reasons. Evidently, the purchaser didn't want to buy it after we went through the process because of the zoning.
Right.
The second part of this equation is that I believe that, and I've spoken to the successful bidder who wasn't a bidder actually, but who was purchasing, and he said that he was willing to go through a bid process.
Yes.
And so if he's willing to go through a bid process, we ought to follow the law and go through the bid process, and, you know, he can buy it.
Could have gotten more than 25,000 for it.
We might have. And, you know, he might have bid more than 25,000.
Exactly.
So we don't know. But I think that we need to come to a consensus of how we liquidate public property, since we've been trying to sell surplus property for quite some time.
Yes, sir.
Those are my comments on the audit. Thank you for completing, Mr. Duke. I guess, Ms. Newberry, do you have any other comments or questions on this particular audit?
No, thank you.
All right, if not, we'll move to item 3.
Item 3, audits in progress. A, PPG contracts and agreements.
I sent an email to Mr. Rennie a little while ago. He said the person that is normally handling this information has been quarantined. He will be back Monday, and he'll start gathering the information that week, next week.
I have a question, Mr. Duke.
Ms. Newberry.
Last year, we also had PPG follow-ups. Is this the same follow-up, or is this just something new?
No.
On new contracts?
This is just a new audit on active contracts.
Okay, I was just double checking.
Just active contracts, nothing before that.
Okay. Any further comments? Hearing none, we'll move to item B.
Item 3B, port contracts and agreements.
I'm going to get with Ms. Riley on this audits in February, and hopefully start gathering the information sometime in late February, and start the audit accordingly, as soon as I possibly can, as soon as she's got the time to,
And this is the same as the PPG audits?
yes, I was trying to combine both of those at one time, and trying, because I like to do 2 audits at once, that way I get them out faster, but it appears that Ms. Riley is busy, and so we're gonna, have to push her audit back into, February, maybe the beginning of March. But I will reach out to her again in the latter part, or maybe the middle part of February, and see where we stand, or where she stands.
Mr. Duke, I have a question. When you contact these departments as you move forward with your list, do you send them a copy of the date that our schedule was adopted?
I send the schedule to our parish president, Mr. Lapine, and I've sent it to him twice. I haven't gotten it back yet. But in my opinion, that's the normal route I go, because he can disseminate it to his directors.
Okay. So
Now the port, I haven't been sending the port a copy of it, but I think I need to start doing that.
Okay. Yeah, it'd help a little bit,
Yes.
that way they can be prepared a little bit more in advance.
Yes, ma'am, that's a good idea.
So are you going to move on to flood control until you kind of get those answers?
Well, I'm going
Or
to,
you
if there's a situation where I finish PPG and I can't get with the port, that's what I'll do.
Okay. Thank you.
But we want to keep this stuff rolling. That's the only way we can get a whole lot of it done. We don't want any time lags. That's what I'm trying to not have.
A lot of your time lag seems to be a lack of response or slow response.
It's a slow response, yes. Now, during the holidays, I tried to get this up and running in December, but that was unrealistic, so.
Any further comments? Anybody? If none, we'll move to item 4.
Item 4, approval of the minutes from the October 14th, 2021 meeting.
All right.
Motion?
Yeah, I'll move with the motion.
I'll second it. Any comments or discussion on the adoption of the minutes from the October 14th, 2020 meeting? Hearing none, machine is open. And the minutes are adopted, 2-0, Mr. Konovich being absent. No further business coming before the board. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, I'll second. Machine is open on the adjournment. And the meeting is adjourned at 1:25.